Welcome back to the Tennis Doctors, where three physicians talk about the world of men's professional tennis. We're here to talk about Wimbledon final 2022 aftermath, what we thought about Novak Djokovic, Nick Kyrgios, and the rest of the characters from the world of ATP tennis and heading into the North American hardcourt fall season. Joining me as always, Dr. Bilal Ahmed.
Hey, how's it going?
And Dr. Arjun Watani.
Hey, excited to be here again.
So, after the French Open, we did winners and losers. I think that I'm going to get in advance of that. I think we had a lot of people miss this event who we were excited about, or people were very obviously bummed by their results at this tournament. So I think we forego that. Let's just talk about the final. I think we have more to talk about with this final than we did about the French Open final. Easiest way, there's a lot to break down with the final. I would say this, and I'll put a 30-minute timer on the clock for this overall episode. Bilal, give me a letter grade A through F for Djokovic and Kyrgios. What did you think about each of their performances today?
I'll give Djokovic a A minus. I don't think he had to play at his absolute best to get it done today. Given that though, I'll give Kyrgios a B plus. I think he was at a level that was acceptable. I don't think he underperformed, but I don't think he outplayed his limits. I think he just came up short against a guy who knows how to play under these circumstances. Credit to Kyrgios to sticking in there. I think after the fourth set, it could have gone quickly, and knowing his temperament, he could have kind of faded out there, but he stuck around and showed some good resolve, I thought. And like serving wise, he stayed consistent throughout the whole match. So, it's really up to him where he wants to go from here. But I give him a B plus.
Arjun, what about you?
Yeah, I'm similar. I give Djokovic A minus. I don't think he played exceptional. He didn't have to though. He just stayed steady, played simple Novak Djokovic tennis, where he really had to just get the ball in, get deep balls in, rally, and just kind of make Kyrgios get in his own head and also wait for his error most of the time. For Kyrgios, it was a bit of a roller coaster. I think first set he was A plus. I think no doubt he came out firing and really wanted that set. Second set, he didn't stick to his game plan at all. And so I'll give him a B minus for that. Third and fourth sets, he did show effort. He was still mentally, he was gone. So I'll give him a B plus for the third and fourth set. But really with Djokovic, you need your A plus game all throughout. And if you're not performing to that level, then he's gonna roll you through like he did the third and fourth sets.
Yeah, let's talk about some specific time points. We were texting throughout the match. I think there's some, I think the first thing is a caveat. So my letter grades, I would give Djokovic an A. We've seen him play better. I think that off the ground, he didn't have, like you guys would say, he didn't have to go to that A plus level, which is kind of like what we all want to see as fans, right? We all would have wanted Kyrgios to push him to win the match at the A plus level. We can mention some matches where Djokovic was at that A plus level to win. 2018 semi against Rafa, 2012 Australian Open final against Rafa. I think one of the reasons we love Rafa is players usually get to that A plus level to beat him because he forces them to play that way. I thought he was great off the ground. I mean, I basically after the first set, I was kind of tracking in the stats the number of points Kyrgios was winning on Novak's serve, and it precipitously dropped. But it wasn't because Kyrgios is not a great returner. He was getting returns in play, a lot of neutral rallies, and he just kept losing them. And I think Djokovic at some point relaxed his shoulders. He was seeing the ball great. He was hitting the ball great. He was basically like, if the point isn't over on your serve, I'm going to win every neutral rally. And it kept getting worse as the match went. And again, it's so hard. I was telling you before this, Bilal, it's so hard sometimes to separate in tennis, like how much of how you're playing is related to how you're feeling that day versus what you're worried about your opponent doing versus the time and the score of the match, right? It's a lot easier to free up your shoulders when you're up 2-1, or when you know the other guy isn't going to do anything crazy and you kind of have an answer for everything. And Djokovic, I think of all the big three, he's the one that seems the most suffocating when he's playing this way because he's not like going for winners on every shot, right? What he's basically doing is just metronoming you to death. But his ball striking is so clean. When he's going just side to side, side to side, I don't think there's anyone smoother than him going forehand and backhand. I mean, because he doesn't have to run around his backhand at all. So he's just kind of sliding back and forth, kind of like Pong. I think this goes back to my Kyrgios grade. I mean, I agree with you. I give Kyrgios a B plus, A minus. Like I was worried that we were talking about the way he was talking. He could have been a total dud. He could have no showed for this. He came out great, He showed in the first set he has what it takes to win. He broke on a double fault. I mean, he played well in service games, but it isn't like he had to actively earn the break. But he put Djokovic under pressure, right? You put people under pressure, they can make mistakes. I just think big moments, right? So second set, 1-all, 30-all, right?
Yeah.
It looked like Djokovic was making the push, and that we were all saying that this is the danger zone, right? Djokovic, Nadal, Federer, they lose that first set. They're pushing for that early break to take the pressure off. And I kept saying he's just got to hold serve and weather the storm. And then all of a sudden he got a look on Djokovic's serve, 1-all, 30-all. He gets into a rally. It was the longest rally of the match at that point, 23 shots. And we all said it afterward. He got sucked into the trap. Bilal, I think you texted that. He got sucked into the trap. What did you mean by that for that point, Bilal? I remember that was kind of a back and forth rally. And Kyrgios, that set sort of fell apart after that one point.
Yeah, I think number one, I think when it comes down to an extended rally, anytime Djokovic has the advantage, even mentally against someone like Kyrgios. Kyrgios knows that the longer I'm playing these points out, the more there's no way I'm going to end this point in a fashion. I would have ended it within a 5-7 shot range. If it's beyond that, it's not likely in his favor. And I think mentally it's hard to kind of stick in the rally and even after that point's over, to think about how many more of these can I really get in key moments, because Djokovic, that's where he really excels, is in the longer rallies at the key moments. He knows how to get into another player's head and keep them guessing. And I think that even someone like Kyrgios, the inexperience matters there. I think it's not tactically like a very specific play, but it's more about just extending the point to make the other person doubt themselves. And I think that's kind of what happened to Kyrgios in that moment. Because I think what I noticed throughout the match too is that I don't know if it's fatigue, but I think sometimes that's how his anxiety comes out too, because he knows it's last. And I think that's where his frustration yelling his box comes from into that as well. So I think it's just more of a Djokovic knowing that, instilling that into his opponent's mind, that there's no way you're going to stay 20 shots with me. So.
Yeah, I mean, and it's hard to criticize the guy because a lot of us would be like, you can go the other way. If he misses like a return, you're like, come on, man, just get in the point, put pressure on him. He played a good, solid point. But I think like the attrition from that, we saw that because then they played another long point at 40-30. Djokovic won, and then he immediately broke at love, right? Yeah. And again, how much is that as Kyrgios is a little bit gassed from those points. And then he's also, like you said, frustrated because he didn't break. He's feeling tension because he's up a set, immediately gets broken. Yeah. Second big point, right? 5-3. Kyrgios did a good job of forcing Djokovic to serve it out. We've said it multiple times. You got to force people to serve it out. And guess what? Lo and behold, he plays an amazing running gets the crowd on his feet, gets an error, all of a sudden it's love 40. And look, power to Djokovic. He hit 2 great serves. That's why you have 3 break points, right? On grass, he saves 2. But that 30-40 point, no one's going to talk about that point. But we were texting about that neutral ball rally right in the middle of the court. And I would have been okay, like you said, Bilal, if he had ripped one and missed it. But it was lazy footwork. It was bad habits. You know, we're going to get back to habits when we talk about Kyrgios going forward. But this is where the training comes in. Bad habits. He just didn't really move out of the way. It was a neutral ball into the body, and he just didn't really move. And he kind of backhanded in the net. Not a good miss, right? Either you grind that one because you're just like, I need to win this point, or you just go for broke, but you can't miss it. And I don't think he was even tight. I think he just got lazy, and maybe again the heat and the fatigue took a big toll. Arjun, I think the next big moment was 4-all. Look, part of it is Kyrgios' thing. We're not going to get into all the nonsense he had with the crowd and his box, but you do wonder, like, how does the other player react? I think for someone like Djokovic or Nadal, they actually kind of view that as weakness. I think it's almost the same as seeing your opponent limping around. They're both like, oh, okay, you're feeling it a little bit. Djokovic was super relaxed, 4-all, 40 love, and Djokovic was starting to get a little antsy in that game. He was barking at his box. You know why? Because he didn't want to serve 4-5 down because he was feeling the tension. He's a human being. And credit to Djokovic, he played 2 awesome points to get it to 40-30. And guess what? Kyrgios donates an error. He hits a bad double fault and a horrible miss at the ad break point. And again, he pushed in the next game a little bit, but mentally, we all were like, this is the match is over there, right? Fourth set, like you said, Bilal, very like good fight. Arjun, he had 30-all. Second serve at 5-6. Djokovic was feeling a little bit because Djokovic is thinking in the back of his head, crap, if I get broken here, I'm serving second. Kyrgios is 6-0 in 5th sets here. I don't want to be dealing with this. Djokovic throws that ball toss. Maybe he loses in the sun, or maybe he sees Kyrgios is sneaking in. And then Kyrgios doesn't really alter the game plan, and Djokovic catches him, a deep serve catches him. That ball, they did a challenge on it, missed by like a millimeter. He missed the return.
Yeah.
RJ, like, what
Yeah.
do you? I mean, do you think Kyrgios's antics, like, he obviously has won matches this tournament with antics. Do you think they hurt him today? Do you think it didn't matter? Like he was going to lose anyway, so he distracts? Like, what do you think about his antics?
Yeah, so I think his antics in a lot of cases it hurts him in most cases. Here today, I think he really felt like he needed his crowd, his family with him, and he felt like his family wasn't with him, which
They
is
were up at every point,
it's
though.
very amateur to say, but like that's
His poor sister.
if that's what he needs, his poor sister, his girlfriend, if that's what he needs, that's what he needs. And if you can't win without your family, without them cheering every point, then you shouldn't be in the Wimbledon finals. But I think what it comes down to ultimately is, like you said, those habits, they come out in tight moments. We've seen, you mentioned a previous episode, Nadal served out wide or to someone's backhand, Federer's backhand every point, and then in the finals of the Wimbledon on like 30 love, he served to Federer's forehand, and Federer was taken by
Pushed it up. Yep.
That's a great use of habits, but here Kyrgios, his habits go back to the lazy, poor footwork, terrible movement, and just complaining and getting in his own head. He was talented. He was right up there with Djokovic, and if he just kept in his head, he could have held another game, and it could be a fifth set and a whole different story. But I think for me, it comes down to is a lack of a coach. You need a coach. You need someone talking to you during those moments, or before those moments happen, pre-match, like what to do when all this happens, when stuff's hitting the ceiling and it's not going your way. What do you do, and what home base do you go to? How do you pray to yourself, speak to yourself in those tight moments? And we see it every day, every match in millions of in every match how players just recompose themselves. Kyrgios isn't the first one with a temper tantrum issue. So many we've seen Safin and so many other players, Djokovic early on in his career, even Federer early on in his career, but they got the help they needed with a coach, and I think that's what Kyrgios really needs. And here with Djokovic is my last point is that Djokovic's baseline, his worst game is better than a lot of people's best game, and that's because he doesn't have a weakness. He's just a wall right there, waiting until he feels better and gets back in the bag and just hitting those cross courts, those patterns that he practices every day. And
he's a total pattern player.
Yeah, he can hit a 1,000-point rally, a 1,000-shot rally, and not get tired and just keep going back and forth until the other player gets frustrated and impatient. And that's Kyrgios's game. He gets impatient if it's longer than 5 shots. So I think that's where
I think part of it, I think Kyrgios is not really an elite baseliner the way some of the other guys are. I think that like in Lost and all the circus today was that Djokovic was clearly better. He was great on the baseline. We talked about, give full credit. We're going to talk about his legacy after we finish with Kyrgios, but Kyrgios is not an elite baseliner. Like you said, Arjun, at some point, you're like, he is not he moves well because he's tall and he's got long legs, but he's not like he's not explosive. He's not good at changing direction. So for me, like this goes back to what you were saying during the match. It was like, he got sucked in a little bit almost by winning that set where he was like, okay, Djokovic's a little tight. I'm going to grind with him. I would have been like, I'm going to win my service games, and on my return games, I'm going for broke. Yeah. I'm just going to take big cuts at everything. I don't care about making you work because I'm not the more fit player here. I'm going to wear down if we start grinding. Djokovic wanted to grind with it. And I think that paid dividends because his double fault started creeping up towards the end of the match because he kept going for big serves. He double faulted on the first point of the tiebreaker, set up the rest of the tiebreaker for failure. Yep. Bill, my question for you, given what you saw, his press conference where he was intermittently mature and then sometimes was blaming social media, saying that's hard, the older players don't get it, it's distracting. Do you think Nick Kyrgios will make another Grand Slam final?
No, and that's the unfortunate reality of this. Is what I felt pretty bummed afterwards. I was really rooting for him to win, see something new for the game. I thought it'd be exciting. Good for his confidence to see how you respond to it. But his comments just saying that, oh, I was never supposed to be here. I'm just a kid from Canberra. And that's all like awesome. It's a great story, inspires a lot of hope and stuff. But, you have the game, you have the quality. You brought it today to an extent. You weren't that far off. You could have actually, there was moments where you were so close to actually pushing this to a fifth. But I think his it's tough to say if he'll get another chance like this. I mean, obviously Rafa not being in the semis, Berrettini not being in his quarter, like these are chances are not going to come around again. He's just kind of emphasizing that he's like, oh yeah, I just trained for like an hour a day and I played basketball and I told my friends I want to win Wimbledon, and yeah, this was like a lot of work.
I mean, I'm not really a big Djokovic fan, but like it's really hard as someone, we all value hard work. It's really hard. I was kind of pulling for Kyrgios too, but when you hear stuff like that, I mean, Djokovic deserved it more in the end, Arjun. Like there's no question. Like we may not love him, but the guy, here's some stats. We've heard them all: 32 Slam finals. He's now 21-11, 4 straight Wimbledons. He's 7 Wimbledons, which is kind of crazy. Between Wimbledon and Aussie Open, he's got 16 slams just there, which is more than anyone except Federer and Rafa. 2 other big 3 stats I'll throw out at you: 20 years since a non-Big 4 member won Wimbledon. To put that in perspective, Kyrgios' girlfriend was 1 year old the last time that someone who was not a Big 4 member won Wimbledon. And then since the Aussie Open 2005, that was Djokovic's first slam. That was 17 and a half years ago. There's only been 1 slam where all 3 of the Big 3 entered and none of them won it. Yeah. And that was the 2009 US Open that Del Potro won, which is kind of insane. There's a lot of insane stats, but that's a lot of years. If they all and I'm take out Federer, just Nadal and Djokovic together entering the slam. Yeah. The only time it hasn't been one of those 3, or Andy Murray, who I think won. Actually, Andy Murray's slams, Nadal didn't play either one, I believe. So maybe he played. No, he didn't play.
No, you're right. He didn't play 13 Wimbledon. He didn't play 16 Wimbledon.
And he didn't play the 12 Open. Yeah. So it's a little bit crazy, right? I think Wawrinka probably snuck one in there too that they all played.
2015,
2014. But let's get into Big 3 legacy. Everyone wants to talk about legacy. How many more slams do you think Djokovic is going to win?
So I think he can win a slam a year. So if he can play Australian and US Open, I think he can win a slam a year for the next 2 to 3 years. Just given the way he plays, he can wear someone down. I mean, his as you mentioned earlier, like his returns may be the first to go, his service, his movement may be the first to go, but just the way he is, he's already a freak athlete. So if he becomes a normal athlete, I think he's still able to get to finals, and I think he'll be able to win maybe 1 a year. I don't think it's going to be 3 a year or 3 in a row like he used to do, but I think he still has. I mean, just the way he's playing, he still has a couple coming. So
give me a final number.
Final number. I stop him at 24. 23. I'll give him 23.
23.
I'll give him 25. I think at this point, for me personally, just seeing him relative to Rafa and Roger, body-wise, he's extremely fit. You never hear about a joint injury from him. He's never getting operations. Rarely. He's had, I don't even know, a handful. I think is
the elbow was the only one. Yeah.
There was a few, but there was nothing super serious, and he doesn't have these chronic issues that are limiting him. It's his play. What's limiting him is vaccine eligibility for him to enter tournament like this Open. That being said, his ranking, as you pointed out in our group text earlier, it's going to drop. He's going down to, I think, 7 in the rankings this week. And if he's meeting up these younger guys earlier in these slams, it's difficult for him. I'm not sure if they'll rise up and they'll probably start to challenge him a little bit more, especially with Alcaraz and Sinner. But I still think that at the end of the day, best of 5, Djokovic is going to win 1 to 2 slams next year. I don't see anybody stopping him a year after that. It'll be interesting. So I think 25 is my number for him.
Before answering my own question, I'll clarify. The stat was since the 2005 Australian Open, every slam since then has had one of the Big 3 in the final.
Yeah.
Except for, including the 2009 Open, except for the one Nadal didn't play. Yeah, that's the crazy stat. I said this earlier, my hot take, and I know that the odds on this are probably really good because it looks like he's going to win more. I actually think this is the last one. Yeah. And I know I'm not going to be people who say this is the last one every single time and then be right eventually. Time runs out. But here's the reason I'll say it. I think that he got a very favorable draw. Mm-hmm. He could only beat who was in front of him. He was awesome today. Nothing taken away from him. He showed today why he is one of the greatest, if not the greatest player we've seen, just from a pure winning standpoint.
Yeah.
But I texted you guys this 4th round, he got Van Rijthoven, a guy who'd never played a slam match. He was playing great, but had never been even in a slam before this Wimbledon. Quarterfinals, he played Sinner, who was also playing great, but had never won a grass match before this event. Semis, he got Nori, who was playing great, but had never been past the 3rd round of a slam, any slam ever. And then finals, he got Kyrgios, who had never obviously been to that stage, but hadn't even made a slam quarter in 7.5 years. So he got people who were playing well, but ultimately his experience dwarfed theirs. And yeah, his experience is going to dwarf anyone out there except Nadal and Federer. But like, this is like very extreme what he got this round. And he lost at least one set in every single one of those matches.
Yeah.
And my thing for him, my point is, I think as dominant as he looks, I think the margins are slimmer than we think at the top of professional tennis. These guys make it look easy to get to a slam final when it's actually really hard to get there. We talk Kyrgios, he's so talented. It took him 7.5 years to make a quarter. Why? Because there are tough guys in the early rounds. And you know what? His seeding was never that high. His highest career ranking 13. And one of the reasons I'm picking him not to win another one, no ranking points for this Wimbledon. He's going to be ranked 7th. He went down. He's the first Wimbledon winner ever to go down in the rankings. So he's in the 7th spot ranking wise. Let's say he even could play the US Open. He's unlikely to improve his seeding much. He's not going to have a top 4 seed. And you might say, look, he's Novak Djokovic. He's going to win best of 5 matches again. Anyway, that is true. But you start lining up tougher guys back to back to back. He isn't superhuman. Neither is Nadal. Neither is Federer. He could get hot and beat a couple people. I wouldn't say he can't win another slam, but I'm just saying the odds start to get stacked against you when you're not ranked that high in your seeding. Now, if he was seeded 1 or 2 after this Wimbledon, which would be what would happen normally with the points he would have gotten, then I would say absolutely he's going to win Australia next year. But he may not play the US Open, as you said, Bilal. He may not even be a top 8 seed for the Australian Open. And yeah, he could end up in a great quarter. He can end up, all love to Casper Ruud, but he can end up in the Casper Ruud quarter and Medvedev semi, and Medvedev doesn't get there and he gets a great draw and he waltzes in the final. Or he can end up with the draw from hell, kind of the reciprocal of what he ended up with at the French, right? And he could end up with Sinner, Nadal, Alcaraz, Zverev, Medvedev, some combo of these guys who one of them may not beat him, but he's going to have to go 4 or 5 sets and he's got to come back and go 4 or 5 sets. And I think that's really, I know everyone talks about choking and nerves. I actually think he was also just really tired at the US Open because he went 5 sets in the late match with Zverev on Friday. He had to come back less than 48 hours and have to, and I think he was just fried mentally. So my thing is, I'm going to say 0 simply based on the fact I don't see where his ranking starts to go up. Now, if he goes out and wins the Australian Open next year, sure, he could keep going from there. But if he doesn't win that tournament, his ranking is going to be very contingent on his performance. And I also think, Arjun, you were saying that even if he slips a little bit, he'll still be in contention. I do think there is an aura and a mental game here. Sometimes all it takes is for one of these guys to beat him once. Like, I'm very curious to see Medvedev and Djokovic play a best of 5 match again.
Yeah.
Because, yeah, I think Djokovic has got more variety than him. And I think he's got more game in some ways. But I think that meant something to Medvedev that he beat him in straight sets in a best of 5 match.
Yeah.
And I'm curious if he takes something from that. So that kind of transitions into the last thing we're going to talk about, which is let's look forward. Look at the rankings right now. So the projected rankings, number 1 is going to be Medvedev still, who has won 5 matches since he became world number 1, and put on his Instagram that he was watching Formula 1 instead of tennis because he was avoiding tennis because he was banned from Wimbledon. We got number 2, Zverev, who's out hurt. Number 3, Nadal. Tsitsipas is 4, Casper Ruud is 5, Alcaraz 6, Djokovic 7, and then you get down to Rublev at 8. Berrettini loses points down to 15. You got Felix, you got Sinner, these guys lurking. Hercox, who was a major disappointment here, lurking. Let's assume, Arjun, that Djokovic can't play at the US Open.
Yeah.
Because as of right now, the laws won't allow him to enter. Who are your big favorites? How would you rank like your top 3 favorites for the US Open if you had to pick today? And who would you take if I asked you now?
So for the US Open and the US Open series, we know Medvedev, I think he will shine this hardcourt season. He had a poor clay court season and didn't have to play grass court at all. So I think he's the favorite going into it. I think he's the second favorite. I think Nadal is a favorite going into the US Open before Medvedev. Hoping that Nadal is injury free and he's healthy and can last 7 matches in a row, best of 5. But after that, we said Tsitsipas is the easiest one of the top 10 to beat. Rude.
Right now.
I expect Rude to go far. He's going to have a great hardcore US series. Alcaraz is a one to watch out for to really take the next step. And I think him with Nadal have the best chances to win the U.S. Open. I think Medvedev, he's up there, but I think I see him more of a semifinals maker right now. Alcaraz, I think, is in the finals. Rublev, FAA, Sinner. Sinner can get streaky. FAA can get streaky. They can both get hot. But ultimately, I think they need to win matches and prove in some of these hardcore tournaments that are coming up. We have quite a few coming up before the U.S. Open. So we have Atlanta, DC, Montreal, Cincinnati, Winston-Salem. So a bunch of 250s and 500s and Masters and 1000s. I think that will be the most telling of who will be where and in what part of the draw as well. Even Alcaraz he can still move up one or two spots and position himself a little better. I'm really hoping he pulls through. I'm heavy betting on Alcaraz and Nadal for the U.S. Open.
Interesting.
Spaniards.
FAA is not getting any love from me. He broke my heart yet again. And he's not getting love. He has to win Newport. He's playing Newport on grass this week. If he wins that, I'll start talking about FAA again. But no more FAA.
30 minutes that way for me right now.
I can't do it right now.
Yeah.
Bilal, any other thoughts? I mean, you have the same sort of. You have Nadal as the favorite.
I do, but I don't know how he's going to come back from this. I'm more curious about Nadal's mental state right now. I mean, obviously it's one of those, it's a paradoxical thing to say, Nadal and mental state being questioned, but it's the second time. I feel like there are repeated injuries of different natures are starting to get to him, I'm sure. And I wonder about what he's thinking about in terms of his future in the sport. I'm not sure.
Can I ask you a question, Bilal, about that? Because we didn't have a chance to talk about this because we did the podcast before he withdrew. Do you think he withdraws if Djokovic isn't in the final or isn't on the other side?
Yeah, I think he withdrew. I think he'll withdraw purely based on his own circumstances. Yeah, I think he just didn't see himself even being Kyrgios at this point. I think that's why he went out, in my opinion. But I think out of the other guys, just to keep it interesting, I think that if you look forward for the younger players, I'll include Medvedev in the younger players. I think he's going to dominate the hardcourt season again. I think he's hungry. I think he is the kind of guy who takes things like this personal to what drives him. And he had a pretty good grass court season. He would have been a pretty big threat, I think, at Wimbledon this year. I mean, he was doing well. Alcaraz, of course, I think I'm kind of betting on him just to see does he rise to the occasion. He's young, it's still a learning year for him, in my opinion. And then I think Yannick Sinner, I think this partnership with Darren Cahill is kind of overlooked. I think it's a perfect coach for him. It's someone who's brought success for people like Agassi and others. So I think it's going to be an exciting season for those younger guys, and we'll see what they can do. But in terms of Nadal, I hope he comes back, but we'll see where he comes back to. What level.
Sinner seems super coachable from everything you hear about him. Seems to have a good attitude on the court. He's the anti-Kyrgios. He just looks at his box with a fist. Very, very positive emotions. We talked a little bit about we think about Sinner's limitations, but Cahill can only help him. I mean, I think that's going to be fruitful for them, similar to Ferrero for Alcaraz.
Yeah, that's a top 10. But outside of the top 10, I still do have Berrettini up there as well. I think he can make some damage at the U.S. Open.
He's going to be hungry too, assuming he doesn't have COVID symptoms that linger. We didn't talk enough about this, but I really think it probably would have been Berrettini Djokovic if he had been in the draw, which is kind of what we all talked about, especially if Nadal pulls out with injury. Because then we were all right. We were kind of split on what was going to happen, but I mean, I think right now the bookies have Djokovic as the favorite because I think they're hedging just in case the rules change.
Yeah.
And then after that they have Medvedev, and then they have Nadal against Nadal's injury. I think that it's Nadal or Medvedev with Alcaraz as a dark horse. And I'd be very surprised if it's not one of those three, assuming Djokovic is not playing. Yeah. It's tough to win a slam right now. If you don't, the experience, we talked about the best of 5 thing last time. Like it's really hard. Last quick hitter, because we got a minute. There was discussion after Nadal pulled out. They said, well, why shouldn't Taylor Fritz be allowed to play in Nadal's stead? We don't do this in main draws events, but they do lucky losers. We've had lucky losers win tournaments who lose in qualifying. And then why did we put the lucky loser in? Just let whoever pulled out of the tournament, let the first round move on to the second round. Do you think Fritz should have been allowed to play, Arjun?
No, I was a lucky loser once, and and I think that rule is the greatest thing ever. But I think in a tournament, once you're in the semifinals, and of all tournaments, the Wimbledon, I don't think someone who loses should be offered a second chance to win the Wimbledon. It's I think that's completely wrong. I think we could make an argument for a third and fourth place match, but I don't think a third and fourth place match to maybe give the prize money or share the prize money or something for that for the person who lost the other semifinals. But I don't see the point, the whole thing about it. I think it's absurd. I do think that I do think that there was I was thinking about it today earlier today. You know, with the way Nadal won the match, the quarterfinals, he came out, he took some NSAIDs and beat Fritz. And then 2 days later, he was practicing and not hitting serves, and then he pulled out the very next morning. You know, part of me wonders is, did the Wimbledon ask him to step out of the tournament? Because if he pulled out of the Kyrgios match or got injured worse and won the Kyrgios match, that would have set up a very terrible finals. Or he maybe
worst case scenario he
scenario
withdraws before the final.
Withdraws from the finals. That would be devastating for tennis overall. That would have had more discussion and more. So, you know, I was kind of thinking about that earlier. I don't think it's a wild idea. I think that may have happened. It may not have. But of course, he was injured, so have to give him the benefit of the doubt there. Definitely a loser.
It's a cool conspiracy theory. I feel like Nadal is classy. I hope classy enough he wouldn't have been asked. He would have just done it.
Yeah.
But what are your thoughts on lucky losers versus, like, what's the difference there fundamentally? Because you can argue and be like, well, why even put a lucky loser in the first round? Just Arjun's supposed to play somebody they pull out. Just let Arjun advance. So why don't we do that for the first round, but we change it for the semis?
I think it's because if you ask the question, you hear it yourself, the semis versus the first round, right? The qualifiers are a different story versus the first round. I mean, the qualifiers are a chance to qualify for the tournament. Whereas if you're in the main tournament, you know that you have one shot to make it into each round. And if you don't have it, you're out. I feel pretty strongly about this. I don't think anyone who loses should get a chance to play. If you lost, you lost. Yeah. I actually like Andy Roddick's thread on Twitter about it. I think he made some valid points. So I'll keep it short and simple. For me, no. You lost, you didn't rise up to the occasion. You lost.
Yeah, there's also people who are saying like Nadal shouldn't have beaten Fritz if he knew he wasn't gonna, like, that's totally. And Taylor Fritz even came on Instagram and was like, dude, I should have beaten him. Like, this is what happens when you sit on your couch for too long. Is like, what, Nadal's a competitor. He's not gonna, if he thinks he can win the match, he's gonna try to win. He didn't know what was gonna happen the next day. He just wanted to give himself a chance.
I think it comes down to like a lot of it is that, like, you know, a lot of people have teams. There's team sports. You have James Harden out with injury, LeBron out with injury, and they have substitutes and the team doesn't stop playing. Everyone continues playing. So you never see that in basketball, soccer, or other sports. But tennis, it's an individual sport, and that's kind of the curse of an individual sport. That if you get injured, you're out for months, and it sucks for the tournament and the fans, but that's the reality of it. That's what you pay for as well.
Yeah, very good points. We're gonna wrap here. So the way the next couple of weeks are gonna work, obviously we have 7 weeks till the US Open. We'll do a draw, we'll go back to the tournament, but in between then and now we'll have some other episodes. We'll kind of mix in some of the results, obviously looking ahead to North American and hardcourt season. But you guys start thinking about, we're going to go through some classic matches too. And you know what, one that I do want to look at that I think is very, very interesting heading to the US Open, that 2007 US Open final, Djokovic Federer, the first slam final they played. Djokovic was 20, I believe, at the time. That was his first slam final. The draw sort of opened up a little bit for him. And I do wonder, I think it's really hard. We saw it today, to win your first slam final. They were saying there hasn't been, you know, the only people to win their first slam finals, Cilic obviously did it, but he wasn't playing someone experienced. Wawrinka did it, but Nadal got hurt. And then Del Potro won that match way back when. But, you know, Murray, Federer, Djokovic, Federer did. Murray and Djokovic did not win their first slam finals. And I do wonder, Alcaraz, when the lights are shining, is he going to be able to finish if he gets to that? It's going to be really hard to pick him in a final against Nadal or Medvedev if it comes down to it. So that'd be a good match to kind of look back and see. All right, guys, we're going to wrap it there. Thanks everyone for listening, and we'll be back soon.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, next time. Bye.